really what retired soldiers care about? Hey, I am Chuck the bureaucrat, and the Army has something that they call the Retired Soldiers Council Program. As you'll see in a second, it is a high-minded, well-intentioned, and possibly naive program that HQDA set up to advise HQDA. If you want to read about the details, you can go to AR 600-8-7. This council program is a hierarchy of advisory councils at the installation and ASCC and National Guard state levels that feed recommendations up to the Chief of Staff of the Army in an annual report. That annual report recently got posted to their website, so I thought we'd check it out. And part of the reason I make the point about the hierarchy is that the issues recommended to the Chief of Staff of the Army in the annual report are nominated by the installation level councils. So if you look at these issues and you feel that they don't reflect the concerns you have, get involved at your local installation and write one of those recommendations. The high-minded and well-intentioned part of this program is that these councils are designed to provide advice and recommendations to leaders at all levels about the concerns affecting retired soldiers and their families. But never forget that the whole purpose of the Soldier for Life campaign is to convince retired soldiers to try to inspire the next generation to serve in the Army. And the Army wants retired soldiers to play a part in convincing the American public to trust and support the U.S. Army. This is where I think there is a bit of naivete. I argue that this kind of service-centric rhetoric is at odds with the mindset that's necessary for a successful military retirement. The Army doesn't really provide you with any services after you complete your final out. And at best, they serve as a middleman between you, the retired soldier, and the agencies that actually do provide you services. You're going to see that for 2024, most of the recommendations are really asking the Chief of Staff of the Army to advocate for retired soldiers outside of the Army. Not that these aren't important issues, and not that the Chief of Staff shouldn't advocate for them. It's just, well, it's unlikely that the Chief of Staff of the Army's voice alone is going to influence any of this. Okay, there were 12 issues recommended for consideration, and 3 of them were endorsed to the Chief of Staff. And I think you are going to love the ones that got picked. First, we have 4 recommendations that have to do with health care. There was a complaint about the prescription ordering system in the medical health system Genesis. And it appears that MHS has resolved that one on their own, so it didn't get endorsed to the CSA. Then there's 2 issues about rising drug prices for TRICARE for Life beneficiaries. Now, neither of these got endorsed, and my black bureaucratic soul thinks that the reason for that is pretty obvious. Those increased costs to retired service members are actually costs that are being shifted from the Department of Defense to the retired community. So opposing higher costs for retirees would mean that the Department of Defense, and therefore the Army, got less money to spend on guns and people. Let's be real, the CSA ain't going to do that. The last healthcare-oriented issue is another bureaucratic competition over resources. The short version is that the Defense Health Agency is saving money by cutting services to retirees at medical treatment facilities. That really pinches retirees who live overseas, so the recommendation for the CSA, along with the other service chiefs, is to put pressure on DHA. This one, approved for endorsement. Trust me, the Joint Chiefs can apply plenty of pressure without getting tricked out of any cash. Next up, we've got a couple of issues that boil down to concern that DFAS is not using data effectively enough. But don't worry, none of these are going to get endorsed to the chief. First is a simple issue about tax withholding. This one boils down to, hey DFAS, if you know the withholding tables are changing, maybe you could implement them in a timely manner. The second one is just, hey DFAS, how about you use DEER's data to update dependent information instead of having retirees report through a secondary system? This last one is a bit more nuanced, but it is equally simplistic. You know how a retiree could end up at a long-term care facility where they need their prescriptions mailed to them, but their caregiver lives at a different address? Hey DFAS, how about letting us have two addresses? You know, kind of like a billing and a shipping address? But like I said, none of these got endorsed for an obvious reason. From the Army's perspective, these are somebody else's problems. All three of them are problems between DFAS and retirees. Now, this next one is interesting to retirees who were medically retired. Apparently, there was a bill called the Major Richard Starr Act that would have expanded combat-related service compensation, CRSC, to include soldiers medically retired with less than 20 years of service. I'm going to have to do a little more digging to see what this is all about, but the council did not endorse this one either. I have some suspicions about why, but they're a little dark for YouTube. Another one-off issue has to do with obscure provision of services. It seems that retirees who live abroad receive support from federal agencies like the Social Security Administration and the VA through offices called Federal Benefit Units. They're located in embassies and consulates. The key thing about these federal benefit units is that they operate under Department of State control. And you might imagine that the Department of State isn't exactly concerned about whether these FBUs provide timely support. This one got endorsed to the CSA. And if you look at the two recommendations that have been endorsed up to this point, you'll notice that both of them came out of the Army in Europe and Africa Retired Soldier Council. And those two were the only issues nominated by that council. I don't know what that means, but it's weird. Then there are a couple issues that are really about getting retired soldiers to support the Army's recruiting efforts. The first is to develop a mutually supportive relationship with military service organizations to help Recruiting Command accomplish its mission. Maybe it's just me, but I'm pretty sure the American Legion and the VFW are not looking for additional taskers from the Army. The next issue advocates for each state to adopt a Soldier for Life license plate. It didn't get endorsed. The last one didn't get endorsed either, but I think it's kind of funny. There is an Army Retired Soldier Commendation Program package that retired soldiers are supposed to get. In that package are 2 Soldier for Life window stickers, but those stickers are very low quality. Between the sun and the rain, they disappear pretty quick. The recommendation is to provide a higher quality sticker. Let me just translate that into bureaucratic lingo and then you can guess what happened. Spend more money on an item that many retirees never actually receive and that those who do get it often don't use. That's right, not endorsed. Okay, that's all 12 issues. And you probably noticed that I said there were 3 issues sent to the CSA, but I've only mentioned 2 so far. Here is the most mind-boggling part of this report. The third recommendation to the CSA has to do with something called the Soldier for Life Network. And I'm going to use the naive word again. The Soldier for Life Network is envisioned as this web-based communication platform where soldiers and veterans and retirees can voluntarily enroll in order to receive information. This would be the stuff that the Army selected from HQDA and DOD that they really felt that this community needed to hear about. And I know that somewhere, some folks from the League of Disgruntled Specialists are just rolling their eyes, right? I mean, they're talking about a LinkedIn group, a group that actually already exists and that the Army already manages. But the funny part's not over. Check this out. The Army issued a request for proposal as what is called a no-cost contract. That's right. The Army offered to pay exactly $0 for somebody to build a web-based communication platform for an estimated 8 million soldiers. Guess how many proposals they got? Exactly 0. All right. Simmer down. Because the fact of the matter is, there are some people working very, very hard here. And you know what they need? They need input from people like you who actually know what retirees need. Help from retirees who have successfully transitioned out of the military mindset. So what matters to you? And more importantly, does it matter enough that you would join your local installation or your state's retired soldier council? I personally do not have much of an appetite for those kind of meetings, but if you have an issue and you're willing to do the face work, let me know and I'm more than happy to help you craft your issue. Because somehow we have to help guide the Army to provide meaningful assistance in a way that they can realistically support.